I remember during the summer trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to talk about so that he would feel comfortable going to college, I'd feel comfortable letting him go away to college. So I remember trying to weave in conversations about budgeting and weave in conversations about what it might be like living with a roommate in a really small space.
What if I get the call like, your son's in trouble, your daughter's failing this class, you know, are they called up saying, I hate this, what am I going to do? That, you know, those are the questions that I think I struggled with the most during that summer is, you know, I love college and I'm still here.
I'm ready for you to go to college because you're driving me nuts. And it was easier to let go because she needed to branch out. She'd always been pretty much a homebody, and so it was a lot easier than I thought it would be.
And when the kids were in high school, my avocation was going to their school events and supporting them and watching them, cheering them on because they both played varsity tennis, this sort of thing. And our biggest experience was that all of a sudden we had to build a new life because that was gone. And one of my worries was that I would turn into even more of a workaholic than I was before.
I don't really think I experienced empty nest syndrome. I was the mom who didn't cry when they got on the bus to go to kindergarten the first day because they were so excited about going. I had to be excited for them, and I think the same thing happened when they came to college. I was sad that they were not going to be under 18 and under my roof anymore, but enjoying the fact that they were now able to move on and pick where they wanted to be in life. And
I wish I would not have known a little bit more about the adjustment it would mean for me. I think I spent all of my time focusing on their adjustment and how will they ever get along without me. I think there was some, at least under the surface, maybe unconscious understanding that perhaps I was worried that they might actually get along without me, and the real question was how would I get along without them.
I don't know how to describe it except very anxious that I hadn't anticipated, and part of that was kind of like when a student goes away to college and there's all this hustle and bustle and busy activity, and then when they're gone it's like all quiet.
The night that we moved Brian in to the halls, and that night I sat down on my bed and I just started crying. You know, I'm sitting there going, this is my first one, this is my son. You know, and it didn't really affect me that much until that night when I sat down and, man, I just...
And I think I'll always remember to the day I died that moment when it was time for us to get back on the road and we had to say goodbye, and I had to turn and my husband had to turn and leave him in that situation. And I just remember the emotional, how emotional I was, how emotional my son, my husband was, and you know, tears, and though I do remember it was kind of funny. We had our then sixth grader with us also, and he just cracked a joke and said, you know, you are taking me back home. Everything's going to be fine, Mom and Dad.
And focus a lot on the students' adjustment in college, but there's a major adjustment for families as well. Your relationship with, at least my relationship with my husband, changed a little bit in a great way, because we now were, particularly after my youngest Clint left, we were all each other had.
Probably the most important part is just to recognize that it's going to happen, that you're going to miss your child, and but it's essential to let them be on their own and to grow up. And so it's very important to put your needs second over their need to become an independent person. And so you really need to replace that time with your children with activities that you and your spouse enjoy either individually or as a couple, and not try to intrude very much on what your kids are doing at school.
Allowing students to try their own skills at decision making and try not to solve every problem for them. Doesn't mean you have to let them fall flat on their face, but let them try to solve some problems on their own so that they can grow and develop.
When you have the cell phones, everything's immediate. And so they call and say, oh, and so trying not to be involved. Don't call their teachers, don't call their friends and say, what are you doing this for? And so leaving them alone and letting them work things out by themselves is probably the hard part.
For many students, I don't think they realize that the parents are sitting at home going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this information, and is this a real problem for my child? Understand that in many cases this is not a real problem for your child. This is just making conversation, and that they're just having a great time and trying to relay to you some of the things that are happening in their life, good and bad, and that's the way real life is, good and bad.
By the time I talked to them next time, they were fine and I was still a wreck. But they're still children when they're in college, which is what I can't convince the faculty of, that they're really still learning to be adults. And crises happen by the minute.
Because what happens when they first called me and were having struggles at school, I would think, I've got to fix it. How can they handle this without me there? And they were so far away. It evolved to the point where they could call, I could listen, but instead of feeling like I have to do something to fix it and make it better, as years went on, I would hang up with the feeling that they know what they need to do and they can handle it.
I told both my kids, there are resources here to help you. There's tutors, there's study groups, there's the counseling center, there's, don't be afraid to ask for help, which I think that's a lot of problems to Truman students, because, they're so good that asking for help is an admission that they're not as good as they think they are.
There are resources on college campuses that if your children will avail themselves of them, that will help them navigate this really challenging transition from high school to college, from more a dependent state to a more independent state.
I try to make sure that these students get the care that they need, and the care that I would want somebody else to give to my children in another school. So we are not oblivious to what's happening with these kids. We really are on target, and we are concerned for many of them, in some of the decisions that they have to make, and we care for them like we would want somebody to care for our own children.